Buck Rogers. Could you explain what the original etiquette was in the locker rooms in regard to handshaking and other things? Can you also discuss how it's evolved over time?
Well, protocol or courtesy, when you go in a room, you go up and you shake everybody's hand, especially if you're new. Now, after you've been there for a while, you don't have to do it. You can just come up and sit down. It's like being at a regular job. But if you go in on a new job, of course, you want to go meet everybody and let them know who you are, and you shake their hands. And the shake is it's like a loose handshake, because if you took a guy and he clamped down on you, and that was the wrong thing to do, because that meant he was stiff. So, but Danny Hodge had what I understand to be the strongest handshake in the business. And I didn't know it one time. I didn't even know. Hell, I learned this business by actually falling in traps. And I'm in Knoxville one night, and Ron Fuller was there. He said, "Yeah, have you met Danny?" And I hadn't met Danny Hodge. I said, "No, I haven't." And I put my hand in it, but I'm trying to do it loose. Well, he grabbed my hand hard, and he started cranking down on that thing. And I was going, "God, I hope he lets go." Brother, he almost broke my hand. And then Ron saw it. He said, "Oh no, he's playing with you. He's playing with you, man." Because this guy, the strongest hands I've ever seen. He's the one who used to take an apple on TV and squeeze it, and to make it the juice come out of it. It takes a pretty strong handshake to do that. But Danny, to his credit, was, I mean, if he wanted to, he could break your neck. He could break your arm. He could do anything because he was that good of an amateur shooter. But the nicest guy you ever want to meet. And even he's passed away now, but even up to he was 80, he was still in good shape, still had the handshake.
There's a famous
Great
story
guy.
that Jim Ross says about him going into a hardware store and just snapping pliers
Mm-hmm.
like that. Did you see any more feats of strength like that?
Well, other than apples, no, but I've heard that he would go in there and he would take those the pliers and crank down on them, and he'd break them. And they look at him and say, of course, you don't see guys breaking pliers every day. So when he walked in there and he broke them, and they weren't regular pliers, they were the long pliers, he'd just break them. I can't imagine that. But he had tremendous hand strength. I guess they call tendon strength, I guess. Excuse me, but very strong in his hands. And a great, he was a national wrestling champion at the University of Oklahoma. So he liked Jack Swagger because Swagger was at the University of Oklahoma. And he used to call up and check with his dad, how's he doing? And he liked Jack a lot. Jack had a lot of respect for him.
I always heard that two other people that had very, very strong hands was Harley Race, because he could bend like a quarter, a penny, or whatever with a thumb and forefinger, and also Gene Anderson as well. I think they're two people who've got very strong handshakes.
I could see Gene and Harley doing it because those two guys were wrestlers, but nobody messed with them at all. Because Harley he may not have been a great wrestler, but he was a great fighter. I mean, I've heard of him getting in fights, and he'd fight 3 or 4 guys in a bar at the same time. And he kind of quit that as he got older. But, when Hardy come in there, he didn't mess around. Now, Gene, I don't think Gene was that much of a carouser, but he had such a demeanor about him. You didn't mess with him. And I'll say one thing about him. Gene and Harley treated me nothing but respect, because they respected the wrestling business. They respected what it takes to get in it, how to be successful in it, and they treated me very well. And I appreciate that, especially when I was green, and I've never been one to bother young guys or kind of rib them and they weren't either. They would actually take up for if an old timer was messing with a young kid, they'd actually take up for the young kid and tell the old timer to leave him alone. Took one time, and guess what? It was over, and the guy would go back and sit down. And they need somebody like that in some of these dressing rooms. I used to.
I want to pick up on one more thing in this question. He says, how has, let's say, the handshaking evolved over time? And I've heard a podcast with whoever it was who said that in later years, young guys would not just shake hands with everybody in the locker room. They would interrupt your conversation if you're somewhere in the arena, like burst in. So, just want to shake your hand, just want to let you know I'm here, and then that kind of thing. And it was sort of like overkill on the handshaking. Does that ring true to you?
Maybe, but I never, considered it disrespectful. Actually, to me, it was more respectful than anything else, because if he had the guts to come in, and it's going to who you're talking to too, I'm sure. But I just want to meet you, and he takes off. Well, at least he shook my hand, and he may not have saw me in the dressing room. He may have saw me on the floor. He maybe saw me somewhere else, but he wanted to get the handshake in. And I guess because somebody told him, shake everybody's hand and don't be an asshole. And I think that's what he was trying to do.
Yeah.
It never bothered me.
We will move on.
Now, I wanted him to come over and say, hey, here's that 50 I owe you, even though I didn't owe him 50, but just give me $50. That would have been more memorable.